Welcome to the Jira Life, the place to find news, events, and interviews with the Atlassian Community's movers and shakers. Join our hosts, Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira guy Nissen, as well as the Jira amigos in the Peanut Gallery, as we sit down and discuss the latest going on in the Atlassian ecosystem. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life, the Jira Life chose us.
Hey, Alex.
Hey.
How has your week gone?
No, they're always short. But not full of regrets, which is what you're going to have if you don't use Revise's backup for Jira.
Oh, I like that.
Special thank you to our sponsor for making this episode possible. And we also have a guest.
Yep.
Hello.
Hey, Phil, we haven't actually seen you since last year.
This
Correct?
is true. I believe that's right. I think we've seen each other, the three of us, but the royal we here, no, I think that's absolutely correct. So I'm very happy to be back. Thanks for having me, guys.
And I physically saw you a year ago, like this week or next week.
Yes, and then I think you were also here in October. Do I remember that right? For a different event? Oh, no? Okay.
No, I've only been at SF once.
Oh, well, then you know better than me, sir.
But yeah, no, I was participating in an exclusive research opportunity that Atlassian invited me to. And then like, hey, how do you do this? And when your profile picture popped up, I'm like, I've seen this person before.
Yeah. That's great. That's so good.
And then they're like, how do you know this person? And I'm like, oh, I'm actually going to have my podcast in a few hours.
Yeah, that is so great. Really, really good.
But then I remembered, I'm like, aren't you like, you're in the OG employee list, right?
I'm getting there, man. I am getting there. I started here just shy of 10 years ago when I was a graduate student intern at UC Berkeley. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, although I was not a FTE, like W-2 employee, what I like to say is my email address got created in May 2015. And to the best of my knowledge, it has never been deactivated. So, my unofficial count is May 2015. And then my official, I guess, continuous service date for, official record keeping would be November 2016. Because when I finished graduate school, I did come back right to Atlassian, but I was a contractor and this and that. So yeah, last I looked, if you want the numbers, I think I have been here longer than roughly, for my official counting date, the November one, I think it's longer than like 94% of people who work here. And if you go to the unofficial date, it goes up to like 97% or something. So I'm getting there. That is for sure.
That's awesome. I always love, tenurism in a company today is like so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've been very fortunate to grow professionally as Atlassian has grown. And, I'm sure we'll kind of dive into some of that here today.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of growth, the last time you were on here, you didn't have this particular title.
No, I did not. I had a different job title and I was on a different team doing something entirely differently. So, for those who may remember me from a year ago or not, for that matter, prior to this, I was helping run Atlassian Ventures, which is, and although that's not necessarily something today, for anyone who would like to learn more, you can check out atlassian.com/ventures for all the information about the corporate venture fund. And then roughly a year ago now, I actually made a move to a brand new team, a brand new function, a brand new motion, however you want to think about it, at Atlassian, called Atlassian for Startups. And I'm happy to kind of go into the origin story of how all that came about. But yeah, last I counted, because I was starting to do some like decade-long reflection, I've been on I've worked in at least 5 different departments here at Atlassian and probably on meaningfully more teams, given we tend to reorg quite a bit here at Atlassian. So, very, very happy and privileged to be in this new role, leading this new program, Atlassian for Startups. Just, I guess, yet another transition for me on my winding career path here at Atlassian.
All the way to the top, right? To the moon?
Well, I don't know. It depends. I guess what goes up must come down. So I don't know if I want to get all the way up, but so far so good.
I know, right? Yeah. But does Atlassian internally, do you track like I think last time we had talked, right? Like there's an app or part of your Slack or messaging tool. It tells you how many years you've been at Atlassian.
Yeah, so we have a internal corporate directory that basically pulls in those dates. That's how I know those numbers, like 94th percent, 97, whatever. So yeah, it's very easy to see internally. I don't know that it. I mean, I think
I'm
it's
just
more
curious,
of a
like,
human
I'm just
interest.
curious how many people are still around that are like a little.
Oh, so that I
older
don't
than
know. So it does not show you what it. All it shows you is like a tracker, right? So it's like a percentage bar, but it doesn't say that of the 6% of people who were here longer than you, this is how many are still here. I think it just looks at it on a aggregate basis, not a real-time basis.
That's so exciting. That's still, again, Atlassian culture has changed so much just in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the culture and the values and everything around the work people are doing here have gone through some meaningful evolutions. But what I certainly like to say is I don't feel it's gone through any revolutions. I think that, it's all adjusted as the company has grown. And frankly, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that there's some sentiment for sort of, the golden days are behind us kind of thing, whatever. If you see our most recent corporate results, the business is growing.
You wouldn't have missed it, right? Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's growing, it's healthy, it's great. And my bigger point there is not like whoever's watching this, go check out our quarterly earnings. The bigger point I'm trying to make is that if you and I had gotten on year over year for 5 or 6 years and you were like, oh, the culture is exactly the same, I think that's actually worse than saying it's evolved, even with the growing pains that have come with that. I think if things stagnate in a business environment, and let's say culture is part of that business environment, I think that's actually probably more of an esoteric or existential risk. Even though that might be comfortable, it basically means like we're not changing, we're not pushing the boundaries, we're not trying to do anything different for our customers, let alone as a company internally.
Never heard it from that perspective, but it makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Yeah. Well, just one guy's opinion, I guess.
But one that makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, I think we both agree here because, or all three of us agree because, I mean, if you're not evolving, you're not changing, the first thing that changes in your environment is going to take your entire company down. So you got to have that constant change, that constant growth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think to Alex's point, I mean, I have been here a long time, and the past few years have certainly been challenging from a variety of perspectives, macroeconomic, cultural, et cetera. Obviously, it's very public information that Scott, one of our co-founders and former co-CEOs, walked away from day-to-day duties, still on the board and all that. But I just think the company is, I'm rounding up just a little bit. The company is roughly 25 years old. And if you want to personify that, think about yourself at 25, right? Like you did know a little bit more than you certainly knew at 15 and 20 and this, but you were really sort of still becoming who you are. I think
fresh,
that,
fresh out of college type of.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's not exactly the best, sort of, metaphor or whatever, but I think that kind of stuff is important. Like it's important to sort of see Atlassian in the macro of where it exists, not just in sort of the day-to-day or monthly or quarterly, what have you.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important, right? Like Zuckerberg was on with Rogan recently, and he was talking about, because Facebook just celebrated their 21st birthday.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, first of all, I was like 18 years old when I built this thing, right?
Yeah.
And now here we are, right?
Wild,
So it's interesting for me from an Atlassian perspective and I think it's an appropriate topic because the first question I was going to ask you is, have we come full circle with Atlassian, right? Because Atlassian for Startups in 2025.
Interesting.
Atlassian for Startups in 2025, I feel like Atlassian for Startups in 2020 or 2020, whatever 25 years ago was, 2000, would have been
let's just call it 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been Atlassian for Startups back then, right? Because enterprise companies weren't necessarily buying into.
Oh, that's an interesting. I see what you're saying. Have we come full circle? That's not the phrase that I necessarily would have used, because to me that implies like we haven't gone anywhere. But I appreciate the question and sort of where you're going. So the way I would answer that is that, well, maybe if I can, Alex and Rodney, I'll take a step back. For those who don't know anything about the program, this is probably a good moment to actually talk about it. So Atlassian for Startups, and again, parenthetically, you want to learn more, Atlassian.com/startups, is a relatively new program. We launched this program back in June, and what we are doing is we are offering companies who meet the eligibility criteria, and I will talk about that in just a moment. There is an application process. So you apply, let's say you get approved. we are offering you the opportunity to pick from 1, multiple, or 6 different products. And those products are Jira, Confluence, Jira Product Discovery, Compass, Bitbucket, and Loom. And if you meet the eligibility criteria, we are enabling up to 50 seats on the premium edition, if there is a premium edition, if not, the next highest edition that's not enterprise, for up to 1 year for free. And what we're doing is we are really going out and trying to find companies that are early stage today who may or may not be thinking about Atlassian, but by providing this program, we remove the pricing friction and we enable companies to get started with Atlassian, because as we see it, it really is never too early to start with Atlassian. And so, real quick on the eligibility criteria, go for it.
I was going to say the opposite, though, is not true. It is sometimes too late.
Yes, I completely agree. And sometimes the switching costs get too high, not just to move off Atlassian, in any world, And so what we're trying to do here with the program is not only provide contemporary startups with a year of runway from a financial perspective, but also make sure that, as a brand, to your point, Alex, when the company first started, for even maybe you could say, I'm playing with very round numbers here, but maybe 15 years, the company was really a pure PLG flywheel business. Now that has evolved over time as we have become, more of an enterprise grade company. And frankly, as we have more competition down market than we've ever had. Part of why we've launched this program. No, we don't. What? Who?
Not
Body
even
language?
close. No, I use all the tools every day.
Well, fair
Not
enough.
even,
Okay.
Not
Well,
even
I'm
close.
I'm reflecting on what's out there in the market,
Yeah.
I suppose, right?
I think people wish they came up to Atlassian standard, but
That's fair. Well, I like to
Not-
think that way too. But I've also got to stay sharp and, kind of play on defense a little bit. Real quick on the eligibility criteria. So it's a 3-point eligibility criteria for the program. And what Rodney was just showing is the website, and all of this information is on the website. The eligibility criteria is threefold. To be eligible for the program, you cannot be an existing paying customer. The second piece of criteria is you have to have some kind of a relationship with a venture capital investor or an incubator or accelerator. And in that sense, we are trying to find, growth trajectory startups. And the third piece of criteria is you cannot have raised more than $10 million US dollars, in cumulative funding. So I explained the program a little bit because Alex's question is actually a little bit of an interesting one. So have we come full circle? No, that's not necessarily how I see it. Although the way I think about my program is that as Atlassian, and all of this is sort of, language that is very much available in our shareholder letters and our press releases, et cetera. As Atlassian does try to become more of an enterprise-focused company from a product and, let's say, a sales and marketing perspective, we are in no way giving up on small companies, not at all. And so the reason that we've actually launched a program like mine is so that we have some brand awareness. I like to think that just the name of the program is pretty easy to remember, Atlassian for Startups. But more to the point is that Atlassian is a company that's very proud to have 300,000 plus customers, not 3,000 plus customers, for example. And the way that we land the next generation of enterprise companies is to bring them in when they are as small as they are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for us, it's an opportunity to really accelerate the opportunity to get on the Atlassian platform, to make these tools part of your system of work, and really to ensure that, frankly, our tools can help you do what you're here to do, which, if we're being totally open and honest about it, is to provide value to your end customers. So by leveraging all the power of our collaboration tools, and again, you can pick 1, multiple, or all 6 of those products in this offer. We realized very early on that while larger and mid-sized firms might like sort of portfolios of products and suites of products, sometimes startups just need a product to solve a pain point today, and we want to enable that use case as much as one where you want to go quote unquote wall to wall with the products in the offer.
Not only that, but products that grow with you.
100%, no question. And that is a huge part of what we're doing here. By offering up to 50 seats, we think we are providing, last time I ran the numbers, if you max out all 50 seats across all 6 products in the offer, you get upwards of $30,000 in aggregate discounts. But even putting the money aside, you're 100% right. I mean, I think that the feature set we're offering at the premium edition is not only a very powerful feature set, but is one that you can grow into. If you have less than 50 users or even up to 50 users, you have lots of headroom to grow into what Atlassian can do and what Atlassian can sort of help you accomplish.
I want to highlight this comment real quick from Sean, because always messing. I worked at a small company with 300 people, and Sean's like, that's not a startup. To me, that was a startup, because I always usually work in 100,000 person plus companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, right? Like in my time. No, for
Sure.
sure. I mean, even in my time here at Atlassian, when I joined, we were about 1,200 employees, and now we're 12,000 plus. So, I mean, it's all relative in that sense. But yes, I agree with that comment. We think 50 is actually pretty generous, but we do, we did a whole bunch of analysis prior to launching the program, and given the eligibility criteria and the funding ceiling and all that, there are some companies who sort of, get close to that max. And so we feel as though it's super generous, and that, we probably could have launched something with like up to 20 users and it'd still be competitive in the market, but we really wanted to enable sort of that acceleration, which is why we give up to 50 for the year.
This just kind of continues the trend though, because I think back again, for Alex's point, when I was first starting, you had the 10 users for $10 license that you pay $10, you get your Jira license, pay nothing, you get your Confluence. You get that installed. It allows a small group to get up and running quickly with the tools. Obviously, there's the cloud that if you have 10 users, you can still use it for free, even today. So I think this just continues the trend, to Alex's point, that you are here for people who are just starting out.
Oh, 100%. I think so for sure. And, I appreciate some people might criticize what I'm about to say next as just, of course, I'm going to say something like this. I'm the guy running the program. But, the part that I find truly awesome is probably my most traditionally customer-facing role that I've had at Atlassian. And where I'm really going with this is when we get feedback, even 1 or 2 line emails, that's like, wow, we're able to do so much more with your products. This is so awesome. Thank you guys for supporting the startup ecosystem, et cetera. Obviously we want those businesses to grow and succeed, but even that moment in time feedback is incredibly energizing and rewarding.
So the monetary aspect of it is one piece, right? Mm-hmm. You save some money, gives you a good 1-year runway, lets you really start with your best foot forward. Because I see a lot of startups struggle now more than ever in this digital age that we are in software development, where if you don't have a good DevOps strategy, right? If all your tools aren't talking to each other efficiently, then you're gonna have a lot of technical debt later, right?
No doubt.
And so I feel like
the switching costs just get higher, even if you don't have that traditional tech debt. The switching costs later on just get higher and higher and higher every single day.
Yeah. They do, and a lot of people like to start off with like something simple, like an Asana or a Trello, and I think it's great that you just start with your best foot forward. But aside from that runway, is there any other support that these startups get? Because starting up with Jira is not trivial, right?
No, thank you for asking, Alex. It's a great question. So one thing I'm really proud of that is unique for this program compared to other, let's say, I don't even want to say SMB, let's just say very small customer motions at Atlassian. In the Atlassian for Startups program, so if you are an Atlassian Startups customer, you have access to 2 dedicated customer success managers. Now, they are not account managers. They are not here to upsell you or cross-sell you or encourage you to go add than you already have, nothing like that. But what we do offer is high-touch onboarding sessions, and they also offer office hour sessions. So the onboarding tends to be, I don't want to say, it tends to be fairly high level because we never know who's going to join those sessions, and we have to cover sort of the gambit of what's included in the product. But if you as an Atlassian for Startups customer want to dive deep into any one product or a particular use case or explore adding additional products in the offer after you've initially signed up, the office hour sessions that Rachel Fisher and Peggy Graham do are fantastic. They are incredibly knowledgeable, not just about products, but they really, really approach this with sort of a small customer lens as opposed to an enterprise lens, that is. And so you're absolutely right. It may not be trivial, but in my opinion, I think with the support of our CSMs, we're not only able to accelerate the onboarding that customers get, we're also able, I wouldn't go so far as to say customized. Like it is not, it's not the kind of thing where you get an hour a week or anything like that, but there is some, personalization that we're all able to offer in this program that from a scale perspective, for example, we as a company just are not able to offer at the free tier, for example.
Some hand holding, right? Just enough, because I just got off of a call with someone. She's like, hey, I just jumped into Jira last night. This is how far I got. I have no idea if I went in the right direction. Help me out. Right. And just having a little bit of just reassurance of like, here's where you should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice part about these sessions is that it's obviously, the primary goal is product, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be hands-on product. So for example, as I mentioned, we've got 6 products in the program: Jira, Confluence, Jira Product Discovery, Compass, Bitbucket, and Loom. And let's just say, as a hypothetical example, that when you fill out the application, you pick Jira and Loom, for example, and you don't know anything about Confluence, or you have a different tool that you're satisfied with in the moment. If you have questions about the other tools, Peggy and Rachel are more than happy to dive into that as well. Just general explainers, for example. It doesn't even have to be like, okay, well, let's bring up your user configuration and see what's going on there. It can really just be sort of a baseline education. And in that sense, we tend to get very, very positive feedback on those sessions because, again, they're not necessarily customized, but they can be personalized. And that's something that we're really proud of here, which is, to be honest, a bit of a new thing for Atlassian to do at this, given sort of the size of these customers.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you obviously have Atlassian for Startups, right, which is a category, but there's still a new to Atlassian teams that wouldn't necessarily get that benefit, right? But it is a tricky thing to do.
It is, and I'll be very transparent. Part of why we have the CSM motion is it is a bit of an experiment, right? You could argue this whole program I'm running is a bit of an experiment, especially given that it hasn't even been live a full year. But from the CSM side specifically, part of what we are trying to tease out here as a company is, well, hey, if we were to offer something like this to other customers who are not necessarily in the program, but meet the same customer profile, like excluding the program label, does that meaningfully increase their engagement, the number of users they have, the number of tickets they create, their ability to create more complex workflows, et cetera? And, we have some signal right now, but I still think we have some time to go before we have anything that we would call statistically significant.
I think that's an interesting point because, like, when I'm evaluating marketplace apps, I have a problem. I have a business problem.
Right.
And I download 2-3 apps that are hopefully fix the problem. But the moment I hit a roadblock of any kind, I'm like, on to the next one. Right. And so that trigger point is so immediate, right? Where like, nope, this just got hard. So you kind of want to new customers, cool, but retention, which I think is really where you're trying to get to, right?
Oh, 100%. No question. I mean, that's, I will, there's no sense in mixing words. I mean, part of the goal of the program is to onboard new customers into the program, but we also want you to stick around, absolutely. No question. That's right. Absolutely. And so, part of what we're trying to do is provide, to your point, Alex, earlier, not just the sort of financial runway that comes with a program like this, but also, get you up and running really with the products and make sure that it becomes a part of your daily workflow. And as I said a moment ago, not just your workflow, but, leverage these products to provide more value to your end customers. Because that's why entrepreneurs create their own companies, to deliver to their customers. And our tools, can help facilitate that, if not accelerate the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it kind of also makes sense because you got like AWS gives you credits for startups, right? Like, and then Azure Online gives you credits for startups. And Google,
that's right. Now, Atlassian is obviously at the app layer, not the infrastructure layer. But yes, you've nailed it.
But it's a cost. It's a cost that a company that's starting out for the first time, they need, because if you are just going to blindly assign tasks to random developers, like, good luck.
Totally.
You're not going to get very far developing your product. So, Rodney, I've been hogging the conversation. So what do you got?
No, I think that's the big point, is not just I love the customer success manager part of it, because it's not just about getting people on. I hear from so many different groups out there, hey, I just started with this Jira thing. I've got no clue what I'm doing. How do I make this match my workflow or optimize, or whatever their want is, their pain point to try and solve? How do I get this tool to do that? And it really does take some guidance and some expertise. Yeah. So either you're hiring someone like me or Alex or one of the other thousands of Jira admins out there to get it done, or you're looking outside for help.
But even then though, that outside help can be expensive, right? Because your advisory services isn't cheap. cheap, right? It's
No,
you need,
no, it's not.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, and this may be a comment that's a couple years outdated, I know that back in the day, at least, advisory services would do intake with every customer who was interested, and there were times where they would tell a customer, we don't think you actually need our services. We think you need like a one-time setup thing, but this is an expensive thing, and I don't think you guys need it. So, your point is very well taken there. And part of what we're trying to do, like, again, abstract away the discounts and this. We want you to get going on Atlassian tools, and we're here to help you do that to the best of our ability at, keeping scale in mind, of course. And if you need additional support, that's something where we have to kind of explore that on a case-by-case basis. But our goal is to get you up and running as quickly as possible so that, these tools just kind of basically, metaphorically speaking, kind of fade into the background, and they just become a part of how you work and how you deliver value to your end customer.
Hence the team managed projects that we don't see around here. We have a shirt that says "Teams do, or friends don't let friends make team managed projects." But a very necessary evil when you're getting started and you don't have the luxury to have a dedicated support.
Oh, totally. And I mean, the reality at most startups, and again, going back to the comment that was in the chat that 50 people is a big startup, which I agree with. If you've got 12 people, everyone's doing 2 jobs, at least generally speaking, right? And so you're absolutely right that, to go out and sort of find someone to dedicate to this can be costly and expensive, worthwhile probably. But our goal within the program is to sort of provide as much of this on a silver platter as possible.
Yep. Because also when you go externally to like your solution partners that are available, that's still not cheap. You got to get down to someone.
I haven't gotten a quote in a long time, but I will trust you. I'll trust you on that, Alex.
They would still again, if you're strapped for cash, they would be expensive.
Yeah, and even frankly, if you're not strapped for cash, every dollar counts when you're at a startup, right? And even if you're not strapped for cash, you probably don't have it to splash around, and you got to be really sensitive, and that's part of what we are attuned to now. We want to support startups, especially venture accelerated and incubator-backed startups. We want to, and not to say bootstraps aren't there. But for the program, we feel as though sort of creating these partnerships is really the way for us to go and to continue to ensure that Atlassian can be a tool set for early stage companies, and not just because we believe it, but because, contemporary founders are actually using it and finding value there.
I love it. I wanted to ask on case studies. So when you're saying, hey, we're investing a lot of this time, like, is part of this effort to get use cases or case studies where other startups can maybe learn from other people's mistakes that are already documented now?
Yeah, fantastic question. So absolutely. And, it's not just an eventual goal. One thing we did before we formally launched the program was, in conjunction with the program launch back in June, we launched a community group on Atlassian Community called Startups. Now, very intentionally, it's not called Atlassian for Startups. It's just called the Startups Group, because we appreciate that if you self-identify as working at a startup, we want you to be able to learn from people who work at similarly situated companies. And whether you're in the program or not is not even the point, as much as, use cases tend to be fairly similar, at certain company sizes or stages. And so we not only want to enable the peer learning through the Atlassian Community Group, but we've also started something called Startup Stories with Atlassian, which is a content series where we interview founders, startup founders, notably ones in the program, give them an opportunity to sort of share what kind of problem they're trying to solve and what their business is out here to do. And then we talk a little bit how Atlassian tools are helping them do it. So we see those as, yes, there's sort of like this added perk of potentially being contacted to have a startup story featuring your company. But it's also a great opportunity for sort of passive peer learning. And I think that kind of stuff will only increase as the program grows.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I'm thinking of, how when you're trying to convince your boss to send you to Team 25, you guys offer like a letter, like how to convince my boss to send me to Team 25. I wonder if you guys have a letter that says like how to convince my CTO or my co-founder that Atlassian for Startups is right for us.
Well, I'd like to think that we've made the offer so attractive that we don't need that letter. I'd like to think that if you just go to the website and look at the headline and what we're offering, that it's self-explanatory. But yeah, somewhere down the road, we may need that. Now, the challenge, frankly, at the startups that we're dealing with in terms of size is that if you have to convince your CTO about this, you're probably convincing yourself to convince yourself to convince yourself, because as we talked about, you're probably wearing multiple hats at a small startup. But your point is generally well taken, Alex.
Oh, I do want to ask you a hard question. When do we get Atlassian for Education?
Ooh, Well,
And
it's
I
not
asked
my,
because
it's not
I
my,
know I
well,
definitely not your win, but the thought here is I work with a lot of instructors at the college level where
yeah.
senior level project designers,
Yep.
the classroom size are more than 10 people.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So there are a few programs, and it's important to call these out. So we have a couple other analogous programs to mine, not so much for startups, but for different types of organizations. So I will get to your question in just a moment, but to call out the ones that I know of offhand, we have Atlassian Community licenses, which are steeply discounted licenses for nonprofits, and that's not
Mhm.
just for 1 year. That's ongoing.
Yeah, so that's why I'm very familiar with that
Yeah,
one.
so that we have the community program. We also have what we call academic, which, if I'm not mistaken, is exactly what you're talking about. Where academic,
Not quite. It's more like that's more university level, right? That's like a lab license or something.
yes. So then there's also a classroom license, which I think
That's
is
what I'm kind of
not.
looking
I
for.
think that's not as well known. Parenthetically, maybe not as well marketed. But if you type in Atlassian classroom license, there is a program, I believe, where individual educators, whether they're third grade, fifth grade, junior college, university, PhD, whatever, if your institution at large does not have products that they are then giving and cascading down, which would be covered by the
academic one.
academic
Yeah,
program,
right.
right? Sorry, I want to make sure I say all this right.
Yeah.
Then I believe you as an individual educator, I don't know off the top of my head what the criteria is, but there is, yeah, here you go. So 75% off. There you go. And that again, if I'm not mistaken, that's not a one-time discount. That is a ongoing discount.
But the onus here still is on the instructor to pay up the other 25%, which is still kind of cheap, but
yes. So I guess then in that sense, the real answer to your question is I don't know.
I don't know.
You know, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that you know, there are some interesting conversations to have in the future about, well, hey, if this model for startups works, how do we replicate it for other
because I'm thinking
other user segments? But that's to be very transparent, like
right.
that's it. These are just sort of fleeting ideas at the moment.
Yeah, no, because I'm thinking bigger scope, right? Like,
yep.
I was trying to teach like the whole hour of code that we do across the United States, right? Like trying to teach kids how to code. Like I've gone at the different grade levels to try to teach kids how to code, and you gotta catch them at kindergarten, right? Yeah. So when I see Atlassian's legacy here, you kind of almost want to get them like doing their homework assignments since like kindergarten in Jira.
I have a kindergartner myself. If I told him he could use Atlassian products, he would probably say, "What? I don't. You work there. What are you doing?" But that's me.
Long term, man.
No. Look, I at a conceptual level, your point is very well taken. I don't know that, like, all jokes aside, I don't know that like primary school is the right age. But there is absolutely a opportunity whereby, you know, Atlassian could probably do a better job seeding our products to even university level students, for example. And then that's pretty great. And potentially a win-win there, right? If it's steeply discounted, potentially even free, you can use it throughout your academic journey. And then you also develop a set of very practical, marketable skills going into the workforce because you know how to use tools that are very, very popular and common.
Well, yeah, because like using Jira is like knowing how to use Microsoft Word and PowerPoint at this point.
I would like to think so too. So yes. So you know, I don't know. Maybe if you have me on in a few years, maybe we'll be talking about something like that.
No, but on a very similar note, right? Atlassian for X, right? Like lawyers, mom and pop shops.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know that I personally, and now I'm really just speaking for myself. You know, yes, I have my job here. I wouldn't say Atlassian for, if I think Atlassian for, I think very, very, very large groups, right? And not to say like lawyers are not a big group of people, but that's almost, in my opinion, like too specific. Now, could I imagine a world where you have modules, templates, pre-configurations in our products? Like I work at a law firm. Boom, you get 80% of what you want out of the box, and the other 20% you've got to kind of configure to how your law firm operates, or a hospital or a telecom company. Sure, I could see a world like that. I don't know that we would go out and create marketing or go-to-market programs specific for a profession or a function. I'm not saying we wouldn't, but I think that when you think about bigger groups, students, startups, teachers, maybe teachers bleeds the line into lawyers a little bit, but you know, that's to me where I think what I'm doing now could potentially be replicated in the future.
What about anything post like Series C then? Because it almost sounds like when you're in
it's a
10
great
million,
point.
you're what, Series A most of the time?
Yeah, I'd say
But a lot of companies are usually in the C.
Yeah, in venture language, you're generally given the criteria for the program. You're generally looking at Series A and earlier. And I guess the way I think about this, and you know, as a reminder for anyone, you know, I was helping run Atlassian's corporate fund, so I kind of know a little bit what I'm talking about. If you get to Series B, C, and certainly beyond, I'm not saying this is true for every single company. Some companies are cash strapped up until they're not. But generally speaking, you have probably either raised enough capital and or you have enough revenue that you can comfortably buy the tools you want to buy.
Now,
and again,
what about the support side now, though?
Say that again, please.
Now, what about on the support side?
In what sense?
Well, again, those case studies, just getting started with, like, what if you're a Series C and you realize, oh crap, I just messed up my life for using Asana for the last 2 years. Like, we gotta get into a better tool like Jira. Is there like is there a specific market where you're like, okay, so maybe I was cash strapped, I missed out on the opportunity to join Atlassian for startups, I made a decision, a grave decision, and now I want to correct the ship and I want to jump into Jira, but now I don't mind paying for it,
right?
But support programs.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know exactly what is out there for that. It would be beyond the scope of my program. But I mean, obviously Atlassian continues to bring new customers in of all sizes, every single day, every month, every quarter, what have you. So the assets that are out there hopefully are working well enough. And I do know, I mean, I don't know if this is what you're asking, Alex, but Atlassian does offer several tiers of support, including several paid tiers of support, where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you need it, you can effectively get, you know, an account manager to kind of, you know, ensure your ongoing success across the board. And I don't know if that's what you're driving at, but I apologize if I'm misunderstanding.
No. Let me try to clarify then a little bit,
Sure.
right? Because so here's what I was thinking. So I'm gonna throw out a word that probably is gonna upset half the room here, but agile, right? So when you think Jira, half the time you're gonna think agile, right? And agile requires a framework and requires a whole process, which I don't think you would necessarily care for, but implementing, like rolling out the tools, having the tools available to your disposal is one thing.
Yep.
How you use them is, I would say, even more critical. Because there is a wrong way to use Jira.
Oh yeah, for sure. Same across the board, right? If you put diesel gas in an unleaded car, it breaks, even though it's gas.
So I'm assuming you're getting resources here for these startups. I don't know, is Agile even covered? Like, do you guys recommend a path, or do you?
I mean, we're not here. We're not here in the same way when I worked on Ventures. I may have said this last time I was on with you guys talking about Atlassian Ventures. I'm not here to tell you how to run your business at all. What we are really here to do is support you in your journey as a partner to help you accelerate your business. So if someone came to us and said, well, hey, we want a waterfall model, I mean, we might, sort of, ask a few questions, but fundamentally, if it's working for you and our tool set can support that, I think that's great. Similarly, and I know this was not your question, Alex, but sometimes I get this question, as far as I'm concerned, a startup is a startup, right? So yes, a lot of what we see are in today's world, AI companies and SaaS companies. But geez, we saw one company come in that's trying to build a sustainable clothing business. And I think that's fantastic. You don't have to be a pure software company to be a startup. And maybe more to the point, to be very blunt, you don't have to be a software or an AI or a technology company, at least not at your core, to be in the Atlassian for Startups program. Now, I appreciate that there's sort of what Mark Andreessen, the software is eating the world mindset. And, to some degree, that's true. But again, if you're creating a startup where you're trying to put solar panels on roofs, like, great, that's fantastic. Like, if you meet the criteria for the program, to me, it doesn't matter what domain, what field, et cetera, you work in. We really want to be here to try to bring in as many customers and provide as much value to as many customers as possible.
That mostly makes sense to me, because I don't know how you provide value without helping them use the tool effectively.
Sure, I agree. Sorry, I think I was sort of, maybe answering a slight or like going a little bit off piece with my answer. In the program, and again, I know I said this before, but I'll just be a broken record. We have dedicated customer success managers who are here if you want to take advantage of that opportunity to help you get onboarded with the program. What I cannot speak to as elegantly or as in as much detail is what other opportunities are out there for customers outside the program. That's not to say there are not resources. I'm just obviously most familiar with what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis here at Atlassian.
But it's like it's good to know then, like how and these folks are being handled or helped. Because I think managing the expectations is good too. I was just speaking from my experience, right? Because usually when somebody calls me because they need help with Jira, they've been using Jira. They're not having to be convinced that Jira is a tool for them, but they are frustrated with Jira because it's not working. It's not the marketing material on the website and what they see in their Jira does not match up. There's a gap, and so I try to bridge that gap.
Yep.
And so I was just kind of curious, like, okay, so as part of onboarding your startups, do you provide, right? But you answered.
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes, we do. Now, to your agile question a moment ago, sure, we can talk about that, but I think for us, it's actually less. The methodology you're using is less compelling than can we help you get going with our products? Period. At the end of the sentence.
Yep. No, that makes sense. All right, Rodney. I feel like I'm hogging this conversation still too much.
Last 20 minutes.
We'll see how Rodney.
It's a day for me. The big thing I want to hit on here is we're bringing the next generation companies into the Atlassian family. And that's good and awesome. What are we doing to support the young admins there that they're doing this because someone has to manage the product in their company and they wound up with the hat on top of the 5 others they're wearing, as we all have seen happen in too many startups.
Well, I mean, he said it himself, right? The CTO is talking to himself.
Exactly. So it's a CTO right now, but it's someone who's managing. What are we doing to help them get up to speed with all the best practices and everything they need to do? I mean, yeah, there's customer support, but that's having had the customer success managers as a customer myself, they kind of get you sorted there, but you still have to know how to do the basics yourself. What are we doing to get them up to speed?
Telling them to watch the Jira Life every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific.
You know, the number of Atlassian people that refer to one of our videos is growing every day.
It's hey,
the videos on my blog.
Totally. Guess what? We're starting an Atlassian for Startup series on our channel.
Oh, well, I look forward to coming back then, because right now my team is me, one other person, and our customer success managers. So we got a very small but mighty team.
No, we got Rachel, and what was her other name?
Rachel and Peggy.
Yeah, Rachel and Peggy.
And we have someone named Julie as well who helps us with all of our digital success. I mean, look, all kidding aside, I suppose that is a potential next avenue for us to explore. I think that before we were to bake anything meaningful, Rodney, or programmatic into what the CSMs are doing, we would want to hear that signal from our customer base. Not to suggest I don't know that signal's out there in general. The fact that you guys are doing what you're doing with as much success as you're doing is a clear indicator there's appetite for this content. But because people are playing multiple roles and, from what we see, configurations are fairly standard, and again, as startups grow, things get more sophisticated. But we have not necessarily heard the demand for admin specific resources. That's not to say it's not out there, but from the customer base that we've built up since we launched in June, we try to respond where and when we can. That doesn't mean every time someone asks for something, the answer is yes, as much as, we absolutely give our customers the time of day and listen to them and, make sure that we're providing as much support as possible, including, myself, getting on with customers where there's gray area in the application. I'm always happy to spend 10, 15 minutes to learn a little bit of nuance about a customer to see if there is an opportunity where we can fit them in. And, the whole team sort of approaches it the same way.
All right.
It's all you, buddy. I talk too much.
I mean, you do, but it's a good
lean
thing
back
today.
again like that, and your background makes you look like you're wearing those sneaky sunglasses when somebody does a slide thing on the internet. Never mind. All right.
So Phil, you told us this before, but Team 25.
Phil likes sounding like a broken record, so give it to him. Hey, let's not get copyright strikes, Phil.
Team 25. I'm told you guys are going to be there. Atlassian for Startups is going to have a place people could go get more information.
Absolutely. We are going to, I won't pull the curtain all the way back, but we are going to have a booth. I don't believe we're on the product hub, but we'll be near it. And what we're going to be doing are a couple different activations. We're going to be there generally sharing more information about the program. I fully appreciate for anyone who's watching this, if you're thinking, but I'm already an Atlassian customer, why do I want to learn about the startup program? Fair, totally fair question. We're really there to do more brand awareness and answer questions, especially because we also know that the networking that comes with an event like Team 25 is really impactful. So even if you are not a founder or working at a startup, maybe you have a friend is or something, so you can share the information after. But we're going to have a couple interactive activations. TBD on the swag. It depends. If
Maybe
we can
one or two.
Well, maybe if the Jira Life becomes the sponsor for the Atlassian for Startups booth, we could figure something out there. No, we're excited to be there. We feel really privileged that, the company at large supports us being there. We'll be there the entire time. We're going to be there to answer questions about the program, and otherwise, it'll be fun. I think we're going to do things a little bit differently than some of the other Atlassian booths. It's not really going to be about product deep dives or anything, but we're going to try to capture some community knowledge and wisdom of the crowd through some of our interactive activations, and then probably do some fun stuff after the fact where we kind of collate it up and put maybe a blog post out on the Work Life blog or something like that.
I mean, networking, that's a big point, but also let's not forget that people are fairly mobile in the workforce today. So just because they're not working for a startup today doesn't mean a year or two down the road they're not going to be. And they're like,
absolutely,
we could get these tools and we could get the discount here because we absolutely qualify.
Yeah, no question. And frankly, what we also see sometimes, I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, like in the same way, like, people have to say this is not financial advice. We also sometimes we get applications from people who are just working on their startup on the side, right? Like they still have a sort of, their regular 9 to 5, and on evenings and weekends, they're doing something on a startup. So, that's sort of somewhere in the middle there, Rodney, of like, I don't work at a startup, but I might in the future program to just, help them accelerate. And then, somewhere in that year-long timeline, potentially maybe quote unquote, take a leap of faith and try to go do the startup full time, for example.
But in that particular case, why would your first stipulation be you can't be an existing customer? Isn't it to your advantage that if I'm doing this on the side, I'm going to go get the free version of Jira and get started? But now I'm considered a customer.
Keep in mind the criteria, a paid Atlassian customer. So if you are on the free or trial version
the devil's
and meet
in the
the other criteria, that is okay.
So it's perfectly acceptable for me to go get started with the free version of Bitbucket, Jira, and then once I get enough momentum, now I can promote myself, get some funding.
Yeah, or if you join sort of an accelerator program or something like that, yes, absolutely. And we have had experiences, full transparency, where customers have applied who don't meet the criteria, and we actually educate them that the free tier does exist, and they actually sort of were unaware of that. And they actually do exactly what you just said, Alex. They get started, 3, 4, 5 people. The free version is more than sufficient in most use cases. And then once they get some traction, either on the funding side, accelerator, incubator, even some revenue traction, et cetera, then it goes there.
We have a note from our producer here on your question about collaborating on some swag. We may need to go hold of Atlassian Ventures before we could talk about that.
You might not want to tell Peter that you plan to use his money or his investment money to buy swag to give away at my Team 25 booth. But, other than that, I'll trust you guys to figure out the right way to broach that conversation.
In either case, we're going to be at both booths, so don't worry.
Good. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys there. And for those watching here, if you are planning to come, we'd love to have you stop by. Stuff that's a little more interactive, maybe. Think sort of writing some fun stuff on a Post-it note, stick up on a wall somewhere, upvoting on some stuff, what have you, and then just stop by to kind of get to know us a little bit. We'd love to talk to as many people as possible.
So what else are you willing to reveal today about Team 25 as an Atlassian?
It's in Anaheim, California. And if I'm not mistaken, to turn the spotlight back on you two fine hosts, I believe that you may be there as well.
I will be there. I was there Monday night, Sunday night. I will be there next Friday.
I mean, Alex,
live
I
across
think
the
you're going to
street.
be there in a little more meaningful way.
Oh, I am. Wow. I totally forgot about this one.
So
Look at that.
I'm spoiling Alex's announcement a little bit, but I got so excited when I saw this was live on the website that I couldn't help myself. Alex, why don't you share?
Well, I'm going to be hosting a learning session. And at first I was very, very excited. But now I'm like freaking out because it's very real. But yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. I do the community-led courses virtually every single month, and I did them all through all 2024. And so met with another Atlassian who's helping run the community-led program, and Andrew DeBell, and he's like, hey, we should do like an in-person thing. And like we're like, cool, yeah, let's do that. And he's like, let's do that Teams. And we're like, that's even better. Let's do that Teams. So we figured it out, and we brainstormed on a title. We looked at all the community-led courses that I teach, and we landed that this is probably one of the more popular topics that is mostly highly attended. So we're going to be teaching you how to do some project management with Jira.
Amazing. So when you were giving me sort of, the detective treatment, putting me under the spotlight about, well, what are you doing for the Jira admins? All you had to really say was, come see my talk at Team 25.
So it's the whole 4X thing was interesting to me, right? Because when we started doing community-led courses in January 2024, we were just dropping the community-led courses as like, here's get started with Jira. Right. But we found that when we were like, get started with Jira as a developer, we had a lot of developers show up.
Interesting.
As a project manager showed up. As a scrum master would show up. So we started like niching down and like making it persona based, and we're getting a lot better results than just get started with Jira. So that's why I'm always very curious about the whole 4X part, because people tend to identify a lot with their role.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I think that's right. And I think most people think, in persona terms, right? In that sense, or at least in like role-based terms.
Yeah, that's why I love the name of like Jira for or Atlassian for startups, because you will know when you identify as a startup.
Yeah, no question. I agree with you. And don't get me wrong. I've had a few applicants come in from like the equivalent of like Series E or F companies. And they're like, no, we're still a startup. And I'm like, look, I'm not denying that you call yourself a startup. I'm simply saying that you don't meet the eligibility criteria for this program.
Watch Boeing apply.
Well,
we're just like $100 billion company, but can we get some slack?
That'd be great.
I mean, if they want slack, they're going to the wrong company.
I know, right? I did want to ask you, Philip. So one other question here on the second criteria on the accelerator program or whatever that part was, right? What was the logic or reasoning behind that, other than that revenue pursuing? But isn't every startup revenue pursuing?
So this is a very fair question. And we have gotten some, what I would say, is some fair pushback from certain applicants who have bootstrapped, and their argument goes, well, don't bootstrap companies technically need more support than venture-backed startups? And I don't know that I'm really here to debate that philosophically. But when you look at the startup ecosystem overall, and this is not just in tech, the stats will show you that most small businesses will fail. And that's not to discourage anyone from going to be an entrepreneur. I have deep, deep respect for entrepreneurship. I think it's probably the hardest thing you can do in the professional world, is start your own business, and maybe more to the point, start a successful business. But when we looked at the overall goals we were trying to accomplish, especially to the point you made roughly half an hour ago in this conversation, Alex, about we want you to stick with us after the fact. Even within the venture capital accelerator,
you have to exist after the fact.
Exactly. So where I was going with that is, even in the venture and accelerator and incubator world, most startups will still fail. But statistically speaking, if you have a relationship with one of those types of organizations, you are more likely to succeed than not. At least that's what the macro level shots on entrepreneurship and startups will tell you. So for us, we do still have the free tier, which is really, really important for us to say. That's not going anywhere. So if you're a bootstrap with 3, 4, 5 people, 2 people, whatever is just yourself, a solopreneur, you can still use Atlassian products. We're not here to say you can't. We're not here to say that they are any more or less valuable. We simply have this program to try to experiment with a different cohort of potential customers, both from a brand awareness perspective, and then let's call it sort of kind of like establishing our own land PLG motion, within the other motions that already exist at Atlassian.
Yeah. My last question for you, since we met you a year ago, 2 very important roles. Atlassian Ventures helping grow the ecosystem in one way, and Atlassian for startups helping to grow the ecosystem in a completely different way. Which role do you find more fulfilling, more meaningful? Which one do you think you had a greater impact in society?
Wow, that's a great question. No one has asked me that. I think it's just different. I'd like to think the impact is as big in both. You're just impacting different people. So in the Atlassian Ventures world, we are quite literally funding founders to grow their businesses. So that's really meaningful, because without the investment, well, you could go find the investment elsewhere potentially, but our investment is quite literally helping you run a business. And to your point, I appreciate that you called out the ecosystem. Part of what we did with Atlassian Ventures, and is still happening with the team, is generally it's an Atlassian ecosystem-based investment thesis. And so we are providing and seeding more development in the ecosystem. So at any given point in time, if our first-party products don't provide a certain feature or functionality, well, great, let's go find an ecosystem partner either through API-based integrations or in the core marketplace that are doing that. So that was really awesome. And sometimes, you'd help a founder, navigate something at Atlassian or work through a problem, to think through a strategy, and that was incredibly rewarding. But what I will say, not to devalue that in any way, working with the end customer here at roles at Atlassian, as I mentioned, this is my first traditional go-to-market role at Atlassian. Having the opportunity to talk to and work with end customers on a daily basis, as opposed to the board being my customer when I was, 2 roles back, I was chief of staff to the CFO, for example. It's a different mindset, and it's adrenalizing and sometimes exhausting. But when you get the positive feedback from the end customer that either the program or the products or some combination are really helping them do what they set out to do, that's about the best feedback and the best feeling you can get. And so that's incredibly, incredibly validating. Hey, if this program with a year of runway of Atlassian creates the next Deca unicorn 10 years from now, then I don't know, maybe I'll have had a pretty big impact there. But no, that's a great question. As much as I try to have an impact every day here at Atlassian, I'm also a husband, a dad, a brother, son, etc. So it's important, I think, to zoom out a little bit sometimes when you're thinking about societal impact. And maybe
we gotta get you a kindergartner in Jira.
Hey, Jira Junior, right? You got 5 months left to capture him. Otherwise, he'll have passed your timeline, Alex, and he'll be in first grade at the when we get there. But no, I appreciate the time, guys. It's always really fun to chat. Thank you so much, truly, for the opportunity, not just to be on, but to share some information about this program. If anyone does have any other questions, just to sum up a few things, my previous stuff at Atlassian Ventures, Atlassian.com/ventures, current stuff at Atlassian for Startups, Atlassian.com/startups. If you have any specific questions, you can also email startups@atlassian.com. We're very, very responsive to the inbox, especially Monday through Friday. Other than that, hope to see some folks in just roughly 2 months at Team 25, coming up pretty darn quick. If nothing else, we'll see how that Jira swag materializes one way or the other at the Atlassian for Startups booth. Thank you, Robert.
You're gonna have to make I'm a startup. I'm an Atlassian startup.
Oh, shirt. I do. That's actually kind of good, actually. That's cute. I like that. Some sort of like pin or badge or something.
I'm an Atlassian startup little pin.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, hey, we're still young, right? That's the other fun thing. Sometimes
it's Peter. Let's talk to Peter. Let's get that money.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to remember how young the program really is, actually. In that sense, we try to keep it in perspective. We've got big ambitions, and we know our customers do too, and we're very, very privileged to be able to support them.
I have more questions, but we'll have to save them for another time. But cohort.
All right, cool. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
you for being on.
Absolutely.
All right, Ronnie, back over to you to close us out then. I'm assuming Philip's got to go.
I do, yes, in 10 seconds. So I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right,
we'll finish it up here then. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
And again, thanks to our sponsors, Revise, for having our back and making sure we're good to go. Thank everyone for watching. If you're not subscribed to the Jira Life, please go ahead and do that.
Or we
ring the
ask
bell, leave a
thought-provoking
comment.
questions. We try not to get them fired, though, right?
We try. Sometimes.
That was fun. If we get the I'm a startup pins, I'm like getting like a dozen of those.
Just remember, you got to get something to send back my way because I'm not going to be able to be there.
Send you a postcard. We're gonna go buy like a little cart. I'm gonna go see if there's rules where maybe I can bring a wagon with me to haul all that swag with me.
I mean, if I was there, I'd bring my fold-up wagon, but
yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Might do that. All right. Well,
but as we always say, we didn't choose the Jira Life. Jira Life chose us. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening to the Jira Life. Our hosts are Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira Guy, Nissen. You can find Alex on YouTube at 8Tech Tutorials, and Rodney's blog is found over at thejiraguy.com. Our producers are Robert King Bob Wen and Lina Ortiz. You can catch us live as we record this podcast every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube at The Jira Life. Be sure to join us and our other Jira Amigos of the Peanut Gallery every week to ask your questions, let us know your comments, and just tell us what you're up to. But if you can't join us live, you can still catch the replay over on YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell while you're watching. We're also available as a podcast over on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to it and think it deserves a rating, we would very much appreciate it, as it will help others discover the Jira Life. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life. The Jira Life chose us.